Hi there. You're listening because you want to get straight to the point, understand what's actually happening without all the noise.
Exactly.
So today, we're going to dive into something pretty significant. It's this announced massive overhaul of the U.S. State Department.
Happening under Secretary of State Marco Rubio in the Trump administration.
Right. And our source for this is a report from the Times of India dated April 23rd, 2025.
A fairly recent report.
Yeah. So our goal here, your goal really, is to walk away with a clear picture of what these changes are and, well, why they might actually matter quite a bit.
And this isn't just, moving a few desks around. The report suggests it's a fundamental rethink.
Driven by what? Exactly.
Well, according to Secretary Rubio's own email, which the report mentions, it's all about the America First mandate.
Okay. America first.
Yeah. He apparently expressed concern about a bloated bureaucracy, said it was hindering innovation, misallocating resources, basically not equipped for 21st century challenges.
Right. Bloated bureaucracy. Let's try and unpack that a bit. The article gives us some hard numbers, doesn't it?
It does. We're talking major consolidation, the number of bureaus and offices going from 734 down to 602.
Wow, that's a big cut. Over 130 units gone or merged.
It is significant.
Yeah.
And it's not just elimination. The plan, it says, is to move 137 of these offices to different spots within the department.
For better efficiency, presumably.
That seems to be the idea. Streamlining, maybe creating better synergy. But, you have to wonder about the practical effects of shuffling things around on such a large scale.
Absolutely. Does it actually make things more agile? Or does it just cause short-term chaos while everyone figures out where they belong?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's not just about the office locations.
No, the report gets into staffing, too, specifically domestic staff.
Right. A target reduction of 15% for employees based here in the U.S.
15%. That's quite tangible for the people actually working there. It makes you think.
About workload, yeah. How does that get redistributed? Who picks up the slack? What does it do to the department's overall capacity?
And why focus the cuts domestically? Is it about saving money? Or does it signal maybe a shift in focus towards overseas posts?
Could be either or both. The report doesn't explicitly state the why behind that specific choice, just the number itself.
Okay, now this next piece is really interesting. The creation of a completely new office.
Ah, yes, the Office for Foreign Assistance and Humanitarian Affairs.
Sounds like a big deal, centralizing aid and humanitarian efforts.
Seems like it. This new office, it's set to oversee a bureau focused specifically on democracy, human rights, and religious freedom.
Okay, wait, that phrasing, religious freedom, that's a bit different from the usual, isn't it? Didn't it used to include labor?
It did. The current setup is often cited as democracy, human rights, and labor. So swapping labor for religious freedom.
Yeah.
Well, it's a subtle change, but could be quite telling.
Especially if you connect it back to the America First theme, maybe showing a shift in priorities within those broader concepts.
Potentially. It suggests, perhaps, a specific lens through which aid and foreign policy related to these areas will be viewed and managed.
And here's the kicker, really. This new office isn't just coordinating, it's actually absorbing USAI, the entire agency.
That's what the report indicates. The U.S. Agency for International Development folded into this new State Department office. That is a huge structural integration.
Huge is right. USAID has always been, the main player for delivering civilian foreign aid.
Historically quite independent in many ways. Bringing its functions directly under a State Department coordinating office, that's a significant centralization of power.
So does that mean aid gets delivered faster, more aligned with policy?
Or does it risk blurring the lines, between purely developmental goals and more direct diplomatic or political objectives? And what about USAID's operational flexibility?
Lots of questions there. The article also notes this new structure replaces an older division.
Right, one that oversaw civilian security, democracy, and human rights. And that was led by a very senior figure, an Undersecretary of State.
So it looks like streamlining is happening at the top levels, too, not just in the middle ranks.
Seems that way. Fewer high-level divisions, perhaps a clearer line of command directly to the Secretary.
So if we put these pieces together, the new Central Aid Office, absorbing USAID, the shift in focus to include religious freedom, what's the takeaway? What might this signal about the administration's priorities?
Well, it certainly points towards wanting tighter control, closer coordination of all foreign assistance and humanitarian work right under the Secretary of State's purview.
Makes sense.
And that consolidation, plus the specific focus of that oversight bureau, It could really show how that America First idea is being translated into the nuts and bolts of foreign engagement and aid policy.
But it's not all about building new things, is it? The report mentions some offices are actually being shut down, eliminated.
Correct. And some potentially quite critical ones. First up, the Office of Conflict and Stabilization Operations.
And its job was,
The article describes it as anticipating and preventing atrocities, which sounds pretty important.
yeah, you'd think so, eliminating an office focused on preventing conflict and atrocities. That raises some flags, doesn't it?
It certainly does. You have to ask, what happens to that function? Does it mean shifting from trying to proactively diffuse situations to, well, reacting only after things blow up?
A potentially more reactive posture. That could have real consequences globally.
Definitely. And then there's another interesting omission mentioned.
What's that?
The report highlights the apparent absence of a dedicated office for war crimes in the new structure.
No office for war crimes. Especially now. The article even points out their recent work on documenting Russia's actions in Ukraine.
Exactly. Removing, or at least not explicitly retaining, a dedicated office for documenting war crimes and pushing for accountability. That feels like a very pointed decision.
It does. So again, the question is, where do those functions go? Anticipating conflict, documenting war crimes. Are they just absorbed elsewhere, maybe less effectively?
Or perhaps, is there going to be a deliberate de-emphasis on those areas within the State Department's formal structure? We don't know for sure yet, but the absence is notable.
Okay, let's pull this all together there. What we're seeing, based on this report, is a State Department being reshaped to have fewer bureaus overall.
A smaller domestic workforce, that 15% cut.
A powerful new central office for foreign aid that swallows U.S.-side whole.
And significantly, the removal of specific offices focused on conflict prevention and war crimes.
Right. And the stated reason for all this, to make the department leaner, more efficient, and aligned with America First.
That's the narrative presented. Streamlining operations, cutting perceived fat, and focusing resources squarely on advancing that specific agenda in a complex world.
So for you listening, someone who wants to stay informed but maybe doesn't follow the inner workings of Foggy Bottom every day, why does this matter?
Well, because these aren't just internal bureaucratic shuffles. This is about the very structure, the architecture, that shapes how the UF engages with the rest of the planet.
It could affect everything. Diplomacy, crisis response.
Human rights promotion, how foreign aid is delivered and prioritized, it all flows through this structure. These changes could have really broad implications down the line.
So if you're tracking international relations, global affairs, this is a pretty crucial development to understand. It's foundational.
Absolutely. It sets the stage for how U.S. foreign policy might operate going forward.
Okay, so this deep dive gave us a focused snapshot of this announced overhaul, drawing from that Times of India report.
A concise overview of the main moving parts.
And it really leaves us with a big question to chew on, doesn't it? Thinking about these fundamental changes inside the State Department, how might this restructuring ultimately change America's role, its actual influence, on the world stage in the coming years?
That's the critical question. It's something we'll definitely need to keep watching as these plans potentially move from announcement to reality.